I was genuinely shocked realizing how many Trump supporters were in Africa. I've lived on 5 different continents, and this is the most extreme culture shock that I've ever experienced in my life. Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Rochelle and I'm the founder of For the Culture. Today's video is going to be a get ready with me, and I'm going to be talking about the culture shocks that I have had after repatriating to Africa, okay? It's going to be real honest and raw and nitty gritty. I'm going to let you guys know right now, this is not going to be a fun, positive, feel good video. This is going to be a real raw video, okay, of me talking about the major culture shocks that I've had after repatriating to Nairobi, Kenya. Also, don't forget to follow my TikTok and my Instagram. We have surpassed 120,000 supporters on all my platforms combined, and I'm super excited to continue to grow. I have also written an ebook called So You Want to Move Abroad, so that's going to be in the link in description. I know that a lot of people are wanting to move abroad now, especially because of the politics, and this is the perfect time to buy my ebook, which is actually a journal which guides you along to help you decide on what country would be best for you, what environment would be best for you, what lifestyle would be best for you. It's a very personal journal where you can honestly evaluate all of your feelings, and by the end of the book, you will have so much clarity on where you want to move abroad and how to actually start your move abroad, including budgeting, financing, saying goodbye to family, moving. It is so in depth and it has so much knowledge and information to help anybody that is wanting to move abroad or even curious about it. So make sure to check the link in my description and get the book so you can start your journey moving abroad. I'm going to be starting with my primer here. This is some Maybelline primer. It's brand new. I got it at my local supermarket here in Nairobi. So let's see how it does today. All right, so the first culture shock that I would like to talk about is realizing how many Trump supporters are in Africa. Oh my God. I was genuinely shocked realizing how many Trump supporters were in Africa. I was here during the election season 2024 for Vice President Harris and former President Donald Trump, of course. And even before the elections, I had had a couple conversations with Africans about it, Kenyans and Ghanaians and a couple different, ethnicities. And the men that I talked to, it seemed like they didn't want Harris to win. They were doubtful of, her abilities to lead. They didn't want her to win. But I didn't have any really deep conversations with anybody about it until the election time actually came closer. And that's when I started basically realizing how people really felt. I didn't realize how people really felt about Donald Trump and how many supporters he really had until the election time was here. And that's when I started to hear more and more people like shamelessly support him, posting about him when it was announced that he had won. People that I had worked with, people that I had befriended, were posting about how they were so happy that he won. And they were so happy, that I guess he, declared victory over Kamala Harris. And I genuinely was shocked because I had just moved to Africa. I don't really know about the history of Donald Trump here, specifically in Kenya. And so I was shocked to realize how many people supported Trump and the things that they were saying. Like, I talked to someone who supported Trump, and they said that they supported him because he is a fan of crypto. And they want him to increase the traffic to crypto. I had a Kenyan man straight up tell me that he supported Trump because he would never trust a woman politician. He straight up looked me in my face and told me that. I had someone else saying that, they supported Trump because he was the only politician to beat 2 women. And it does seem like a lot of the support for him isn't because he is necessarily a great person or even a great candidate or a great politician. It's because they simply did not want a woman to win, which was definitely it was just I've only been in Africa for a couple months, and it was a shock for me just to see like just the brazen misogyny and people saying that really the main reason they support him is because of um the fact that he's a man and they did not want to see or Vice President Harris win. I've even had a conversation with three Kenyans specifically, and I asked them like, how do you feel about Trump calling Africa a shithole? Why do you support someone who calls Africa a shithole? And they said, like, oh, I mean, he wasn't wrong. He wasn't wrong. Like, they were basically agreeing with the fact that he called Africa a shithole. And I was just like, how can you agree with this white man calling Africa a shithole and you still support him and you're still like defending him? And there was a couple Africans who just straight up said, like, well, I don't have a problem with him saying that because he just is blunt and he was honest about it because Africa does have a lot of corruption and Africa is a shithole in a lot of ways. And I just, it blew my mind. It blew my mind to hear people saying this. I would have never imagined that I would have moved to Africa, especially as someone who considers myself to be pro-Black, you know, pan-Africanist. I believe in Black unity. I believe in Black liberation and the Black community moving forward and uplifting itself. It was a huge shock for me to move to Africa and to witness the election times, the US election times here, and to hear people say that they agree with Trump calling Africa a shithole. And I really had to just self reflect and really figure out, like, it was a lot for me to process, guys. The whole election, I voted for Vice President Harris, of course. I voted, absentee from in Nairobi. And it was just a huge shock for me, like to hear people that weren't even in the United States, that have never even been in the United States, that simply don't understand American politics, blindly support Trump. So let's get into the next one, shall we? The second one is misogyny. Coming to Africa for the first time and realizing how deeply misogynistic the culture can be was another culture shock for me because of course, like before I moved to Africa, excuse me, I was familiar with African culture somewhat, and obviously I knew that they had a lot of patriarchal belief systems, but witnessing it is just a whole different level of shock. Like hearing about it is one thing, witnessing it is a whole nother thing. And I witnessed how deeply patriarchal and misogynistic African cultures can be, specifically in Kenya. And it was a culture shock for me. Um, and yeah, so for example, just to give you guys a couple examples of what I've witnessed here, like I've had men like tell me that I won't be successful unless I had a man on my team helping me with business. I've heard that actually a couple times. And like I said, there was the African man who told me that the main reason he supported Trump is because he would never be able to support a female politician. He would never trust a female politician. That was a huge shock for me to hear. And I knew that African culture was more patriarchal, but I still just wouldn't even have believed that I would have experienced and heard some of just the insane like beliefs that some people have. So yeah, that was a shock for me as well. I'm using the Anashi setting spray here, and I'm also using Fenty and LA Pro concealer. So if you guys want to know what I'm using. And I brought this Fenty actually from the United States. No, actually from Brazil. I got this in Brazil. I didn't get it in Africa. They actually don't even have it in Nairobi. So yeah, that was a huge shock for me. And also there was a employee that I had hired to help me with my content and for videography. And just to be honest, I'm here to be honest, I'm not here to lie. He was sexually harassing me and some of my colleagues. Like he was making sexual jokes, unprofessional, inappropriate sexual jokes. And I gave him like two different warnings. He didn't take me seriously, even when I warned him and told him that it wasn't okay to make perverted sexual jokes in the workplace. And eventually I did end up firing him. Mind you, I've only been in Africa for like 3 months. And these have been like huge cultural shocks that I have been through. Um, and so, yes, the patriarchy is very, very deeply embedded into the culture, of course. And it presents itself in a lot of ugly ways. Even sometimes, like the women, like there was one time I was standing in line and there was a fellow who had came and stood next to me. I was first in line. There was a man that came and stood next to me, and the representative was a woman, and she instinctively looked to the man and was about to help the man first, even though I had been standing there. And like it was just like it was almost instinct, like to help the man first and ignore me and ignore the fact that I had been standing in line first. And so that is also something that I've had to come to terms with, something that I've had to get used to. It's their culture, it's deeply embedded into their culture. And I have never experienced a patriarchy or misogyny this intense. It can be intense sometimes. And just another caveat to that is just the extreme cultural differences in general. In general, has just been a big adjustment for me, and that's also another reason why I said like the honeymoon phase is over because like I kind of crashed down to reality pretty intensely. Especially the more I started to learn about African cultures and how women are perceived and how I am expected to navigate society. Mind you, for those that don't know, I have been living abroad for 13 years. I have lived in Nairobi, Kenya is my sixth country. Okay, so I'm not fresh out of the United States. I'm not new to this. I've been living abroad since I was 18 years old. And I will say that this still is one of the most intense cultural shocks that I have ever had moving to another country. And I'm navigating it the best way that I know how. But the culture shocks have been intense for me. And I have done a lot of reflection just trying to identify how I'm going to adjust to a culture that just is so foreign to me, even though I've literally lived on 3 or 4 different continents. I've lived in Asia, Europe, South America, and North America, and then now Africa. I've lived on 5 different continents, and this is the most extreme culture shock that I've ever experienced in my life. As a very traveled person, a very cultured person, a very yeah, I have a global perspective. I've been living abroad for over a decade, and still, this culture shock has been extreme for me.